Hi guys, welcome back to my What If series called, What If Deku Had the World? If you like this video, be sure to subscribe. Without further ado, let's begin. Time jump to April. Deku is home packing up for his first day at UA High School. When he's about to leave, he sees and picks up a picture of him with his mom when he was younger. He remembered he promised he would help get his mom out of the hospital as soon as possible. Deku arrives at school and gets to class 1A. He sees Bakugo, the random blue-haired kid with glasses whose arm he broke, and more unknown students. The random blue-haired kid was arguing with Bakugo about having his feet on his desk. Bakugo and the blue-haired kid stopped talking once they noticed Deku and the class followed. Deku looks at the class puzzled and calm, wondering why they were looking at him. The blue-haired kid looks at Deku disgusted and wonders why he was in the same room with Deku after he broke his arm. Although he hated him, he walked over to Deku and introduced himself as Tenya Ida. He then congratulates Deku on getting first place even though Deku wanted to stay behind to not draw attention to himself or his powers. Deku introduces himself as Izuku Midoriya. The nice girl who he saved from the zero-pointer even remembers him. Bakugo was so irritated that he made it into UA High School and decided he was going to find out how Deku made it into UA. The nice girl was excited to make friends and have a good time at UA. A voice was heard saying, "If you're only here to make friends, then leave." The class looks outside the classroom to see a goth guy inside a yellow sleeping bag who's actually their teacher. The teacher gets outside the bag and tells everyone to change into their UA training outfits and meet outside. The teacher says that they'll be doing a quirk assessment test since orientation is useless. The teacher tends to prove to the Ministry of Education that people with strong quirks should pass more. Bakugo is chosen first and he scores over 700 meters in the ball throw. The teacher gets mad when the class says that the exercise is gonna be fun and decides whoever comes last is going to be sent home. The teacher then tells them that these tests are to see how much potential they have. Everyone gets their usual scores, then it's Deku's turn. Even though Deku's holding back, these are his scores in all of the exams. He almost jumped over the whole sandbox. He ran around 4.3 seconds in the 50-meter dash. Bakugo only won that race because he was holding back. Deku's grip was around 200 kilograms. Lastly, he uses his stand strength to throw the ball 590 meters. Some of the classmates were amazed at Deku's power while some were still trying to figure out his power. This made Bakugo furious as he tried to attack Deku while trying to figure out his power. However, Deku was ready for this as he and Zawarudo stood ready to defend. Bakugo then gets stuck in a tape that appears to be emitting from the teacher's scarf whose name Shota Aizawa. Deku recognizes him as a hero named Eraser Head and his quirk is that he can erase people's quirk as long as he doesn't blink. Shota tells the students nobody's getting expelled because he only said that to make everyone give it all they got. The class was over after that. The students were heading to the station at this point. Tenya and Deku were walking to the station when the girl Deku saved in part 2 came to join them, whose name was Ochako Uraraka. Throughout the day the students went to grammar class being taught by Present Mike and had lunch in the cafeteria. The next class was amazing because everyone saw All Might enter the classroom and saw that he was going to teach Hero 101. He selected that today's lesson will be battle training, aka Heroes vs Villains. He also gives the students their normal costumes. Deku gets his costume, but it's way different from the canon one. This one was black with dark golden and green stripes. The same mask though, he had the same belt around his waist for holding his shurikens, and no gloves. Moving on, Everyone gets their regular teams like canon. Deku's battle goes slow at first as he's just walking with Ochako Uraraka. Deku is a little nervous, but he knows all of Bakugo's skills and his fighting style. Deku smells and hears someone closing in on both him and Ochako. He sees Bakugo jumping from behind a wall and about to hit Deku with a mean right hook explosion. Deku uses time skip to safely teleport him and Ochako behind Bakugo as the explosion misses them. Bakugo runs to hit Deku with another explosion, but Deku counters it and body slams him. Deku teases Bakugo about his skills, that he's quite powerful, but he falls a bit short when he is faced with someone like him. This pisses Bakugo off and he uses his quirk to propel himself at Deku and try to kick him, but Zawarudo blocks it. Deku then punches Bakugo in the stomach hard enough to knock him away 20 feet. This hurt Bakugo a lot, but he stands up as if it was nothing. Bakugo doesn't believe that Deku has a quirk and that he's still weak. Deku says to Bakugo that he must be stupid to not know that he will never defeat him, and that his attitude and cocky behavior will never let him succeed unless he changes the way he acts toward people and stops thinking only for himself. This sends Bakugo over the deep end as he's had enough and points his gauntlet at Deku and explains that his sweat is like nitroglycerin, an explosive chemical that he can use as fuel for his explosions. The more he sweats, the bigger the explosion. All Might said to Bakugo not to use that power since it could kill Deku. Bakugo is about to use it, saying to All Might if it misses, he doesn't die. Deku tells Bakugo this is his last chance to quit and change for the better or suffer the worst right now. Bakugo pulls the pin and a giant fireball heads towards Deku. Deku says, "You are a fool. Witness my power as it will allow me to rule the world." Deku shouts out, "Zawarudo," as the fireball freezes up moments before it hits him. Deku walks through the frozen flames and sees a frozen Bakugo. Deku flies over to Bakugo and says, "This is Zawarudo. That's right, I caused time to stop for you so you won't feel or see anything. However, you will not be able to use your explosions for the rest of this fight." To seal the deal, Deku puts his hand on Bakugo's and freezes his pores to stop his sweat from coming out on his hands and takes his giant gauntlets. Deku flies backward as time resumes. The fireball blows up the wall behind Deku and Bakugo is surprised at how he dodged it. Bakugo is extremely and surprisingly mad at how he missed and how he got his gauntlets so quickly. Bakugo tries to use his explosions on Deku, but it doesn't work. Deku teases Bakugo by saying, "What's wrong, out of ammo?" Zawarudo punches Bakugo and uppercuts him and then unleashes a flurry of punches at him, knocking him out. Deku goes to the hole created by Bakugo and flies outside the hole and up to the top floor and punches through the wall, uses time stop, and grabs the weapon. Tima wins the Heroes vs Villains combat training exercise. A girl with a ponytail named Momo tells the reason why Tenya Ida is still MVP. Although Bakugo destroyed the second floor's wall, Deku destroyed the fifth floor's wall. Everyone besides Tenya didn't play the part and was reckless about their choices. Bakugo thinks about the fight and thinks that Deku could have killed him even if they were in a real 1v1, which scares and pisses him off more, but he keeps his cool. The other fights go as normal as in the canon timeline. After every team has done the exercise, the class ends. All Might dismisses the class as he runs out of the building. His power runs out and he turns into Small Might. All of Deku's classmates were hyped up around Deku because of how powerful he was and what skills he showed in the exam. Deku asks Ochako what happened to Bakugo and why he hasn't shown up in the classroom. Ochako says he was about to leave the school. Deku flies to Bakugo without him or anyone seeing and touches him on the shoulder. Deku says that he's sorry for beating him in the Heroes vs. Villain battle exercise and that he wasn't trying to make him feel useless. Bakugo doesn't care for Deku's apology because he lost, and to make it worse he lost to him and vows that he'll gain even more power than Deku will ever have. All Might catches up to Bakugo too and tell him he has a lot to learn. Bakugo tells All Might to let him go and that he'll get even more famous than the symbol of peace without his help. All Might guess Bakugo's over the loss and that being a teacher is pretty hard. Somewhere unknown, a random guy asks his team what'll the world think once the symbol of peace dies. The next day, Deku is surrounded by paparazzis being asked how it feels working with All Might. Next, Ochako is interviewed, Ida is interviewed, then Bakugo is interviewed, who threatens the paparazzi team to go away. Then Shota tells the paparazzis to go away because they're disturbing his students. A lady from the paparazzi media team tries to enter the school grounds, but the wall and gate defense stops her and the group from entering because they don't have a special pass or ID. Back in class, Shota goes over the team's results from the Heroes vs. Villain exercise. He informs Bakugo he's talented but he must let go of his pride in order to grow. He then tells Deku that he's very talented but he feels like superhuman isn't a quirk and wants to find out what Deku's true quirk is. Shota tells the classroom the first task is to pick a class representative. Everyone wanted to be class representative. Ida decides for the class to vote for one. The class thinks that everyone will vote for themselves but goes ahead with his idea. The class voted for class representative Deku and Momo as the deputy. Deku is quite happy to be chosen as class representative. Ida tells Deku congrats and that he'll be a good leader because the Ida family agency taught him that wanting a job and being suited for it is different from each other. Ida family agency. It turns out Ida's family owns a business where they have a bloodline business of being heroes, like the Turbo Quirk hero Ingeninum, aka his older brother who honors the code of heroes who he strives to be like. Deku knows that he and Tenya are the same because they want to be like their idols. A class bell rings and an announcement comes on warning them that a level 3 security breach, meaning someone has gotten past the school's barrier, is going down and all students must vacate the school. All the students are pushing and shoving to get out of the school. Even Deku, Ochako, and Ida are having a hard time keeping calm during this. Ida was expecting this from the UA students, but Deku thinks the students are causing a panic themselves. Ida looks outside and sees paparazzi surrounding Present Mike and Shota wanting an interview with All Might even though they said it was his day off. Ida tells Deku there's paparazzis outside and this whole thing was a fluke. Deku calls out his stand's name Zawarudo while everyone is distracted and freezes time. He files over the crowd onto the exit sign. Time resumes as the students continue to flee the building. Deku says, "Calm down everyone, we're safe, it's just a media news company outside. We need to stay calm and act like real students." This calms the school down and class resumes. The next day, All Might is stopping crimes while late for school and realizes his time for using One for All is shortening every day. He must select someone to inherit One for All immediately. At UA, the topic of the day was rescue training. The class will be taking a bus to a place called Unforeseen Simulate Joint, aka USJ, a training ground with all variants of disasters. Their tour guide calls herself 13. Shota asked about the whereabouts of All Might because he said he'd meet everyone there. 13 puts up 3 fingers and says he ran out of time because of hero work. Deku realizes that when 13 puts up 3 fingers that means All Might is at his limit for using One for All. Shota is frustrated at this truth but nothing can be done about it, so he determines to continue. 13 introduces her quirk called Black Hole, which can suck up anything like a vacuum and turn it into dust. It's a powerful quirk indeed, but it can kill others if she doesn't plan for the next step. Today's class will teach them how to use their quirks to keep others safe and save lives. Some of the lights are turned off and the water fountain is turning off and on. Shota turns around to see a portal. A head with blue hair with hands covering it up, its face sticks out of it. Shota notices what's happening. They're under attack. He orders everyone to stay back and for 13 to guard them with her life. A lot of villains started coming through the portal all at once. They came looking for All Might. Shota comes up with the assumption that they were the guys who trespassed on UA high school grounds. Since All Might's not here, they'll force him to come here by killing some kids. Everyone in the class is scared. Everyone wondered how an entire ground of supervillains got there with the sensors on. Someone with a quirk or equipment overridden the sensors. They're pretty smart for doing that, but it was foolish of them. Shota orders 13 to get the students to evacuate. Kaminari, one of the students from Deku's class with electric powers that made him dizzy, was requested to contact the school about the invasion. Deku says to Shota that he won't stand a chance against all those heroes if all he can do is erase the quirks of whoever he sees. Shota tells Deku not to underestimate him because he has more tricks up his sleeves. Shota puts on his eye goggles to cover his eyes and rushes into battle. They begin to laugh at the fact that he charged at them by himself and think that he's idiotic for that, but they were wrong. Shota was erasing quirks and comboing villains left and right. The reason that Shota has the goggles is so they can't see whose quirk he erased. Deku watches as the class is evacuating. Ida tells Deku to escape too. There's no time for analysis and they have to leave immediately. The portal villain teleports in front of them and blocks their only means of escape. He thought All Might would be here so they could kill him, but he wasn't. The class has no other choice. They have to battle with the portal villain if they want to make it out of there alive. Bakugo attacks the portal villain with Kirishima, a student with the power to harden his body, but that fails. The portal villain Kurogiri then uses his portal ability to scatter them around different areas of the USJ. Deku is dropped into the water area. He tries to swim back up, but his senses go off, alerting him to something closing in on his location. He sees a shark-like villain swimming and heading towards him. He gets ready to use his ice powers to immobilize the shark, but Su aka Suya Asui, another one of Deku's classmates who has the powers of a frog, as a quirk, kicks the villain away. She's carrying Mineta, another person in Deku's class. They regroup on top of the ship in the watery area. Deku theorizes that the villains must have got files of today's schedules while the evacuation was going on. They planned this attack well, said Todoroki, another member of Class 1A. Suyu said that they probably did have a way to kill them if this attack was well planned. Deku knows that they're trying to kill All Might because he intimidates villains and keeps crime rates low. The ship gets surrounded by villains with water and fish quirks. Everyone is fighting villains and is in trouble at this point in the story. Deku gathers himself and focuses on dealing with the villains in front of him. All Might in his wimpy form is trying to call Shota and 13, but they don't answer. Something is wrong. He's about to leave the school to join them but is stopped by Nezu, the school principal. He talks to All Might about how he stopped 3 crimes in an hour. He tells All Might that he needs to stop trying to stop every crime he hears about since his power is limited to 3 hours and that he needs to find a successor soon for One for All. He gave him this job to escape being the center of attention by being a teacher. All Might transforms back to Small Might as the principal makes him relax to recover his strength. Furthermore, The principal tells All Might that he needs to put his students first before his hero work and that more hero agencies in town can handle crime as he works. Some students who were fighting against the Kurogiri realized that the rest of the class was teleported to different areas of USJ. They managed to see that the portal villain was immune to e-port people anywhere. However, they don't give up. This villain must have a weakness somewhere on his body. 13 needs Ida to use his quirk engine, a quirk that makes him extremely fast to leave and go get help, but he thinks that it is selfish to leave them behind. 13 tells Ida that he needs to do this to be a real hero and that Ochako is going to help him escape. Knowing their method of escape, the portal villain immediately tries to attack the group, but 13 uses her black hole quirk to suck him up. This backfires when Kurogiri used his quirk to reverse it on herself and put her out of commission. Ida sprints to the exit, but Kurogiri materializes in front of the exit. Metso Shoji, a kid with a quirk who can grow tentacles on his body and transform them into other parts of his body, tackles the portal villain. Kurogiri escapes the spider arm hero's grip and quickly catches up to Ida. As he's about to send Ida to another area of the USJ, Ochako uses her anti-gravity quirk on him. Even when he starts trying to stretch his body out to reach Ida, the combined power of Hantasero's sugary super strength and Rikido Sato's tape quirk pull him away from Ida. This bought Ida enough time to prime the door open and escape to find help. Back to the water area, Deku thinks that the reason everyone including Tsuyu and Mineta were teleported to the ship was that the villains didn't know much about all of their quirks, or they would have put us somewhere where our powers were mostly weakened. They only separated them to easily kill them in smaller groups. Tsuyu informs them that her quirk is just like a frog. She can jump high, stick her tongue out 20 meters, crawl walls like Spider-Man, and the other powers that are pretty useless. Deku tells the group that he doesn't have powers, but he's incredible in all varieties of ways when it comes to battle. Mineta has a quirk that gives him the power to use the balls that grow on his head that can stick to anything. His balls don't stick to him and their strength depends on how he feels. Mineta starts crying in sorrow because he thinks that they're going to die if the heroes don't get here. The villains use their water powers to slice the ship in half and scream to the passengers on board that the ship will sink within a minute, and when they're in the water, they're dead. Deku takes the time to tell Tsuyu and Mineta a plan he came up with. Tsuyu needs to use her tongue to throw Deku in the air, then grab Mineta and escape. Tsuyu belts her tongue around Deku's chest as she whirls and lobs him into the air. She proceeds to grab Mineta and jump into the air. The villains in the water focused on the leaping heroes as they were about to attack them with their water powers. While falling, the airborne hero calls out for his stand. Zawarudo as a circle covers the entire room and sends ripples with rainbow lights and sucks them up. Deku stops falling as he starts using his flight powers. Deku uses Zawarudo to throw shurikens at the villains coasting in the water. He then chuckles at his own potency, thinking to himself that he'll become more than just the symbol of peace. Deku gets back into the position of falling as time resumes and the shurikens either kill or injure most of the wrongdoers in the water. Some of the evil doers float in the water dead or try their best to stay afloat and escape. Deku dives into the water and grabs one of the villains' dead bodies and sinks his fingers into their skin and starts sucking their blood, making his strength more potent. Good, but this isn't enough blood to boost my power, said Deku. Deku then flies off without anyone noticing. Tsuyu and Mineta decide to follow the shore instead of taking the central plaza to avoid the villains who are fighting against Shota. But they stop to watch Shota fight against countless villains trying to kill him. Todoroki has an easy time handling villains by freezing the ground and villains around him almost completely. Todoroki knows that these people don't know how to control their powers, so they're pawns, and there's only a handful of villains to worry about. Todoroki begins interrogating the almost frozen villains by saying they'll die of hypothermia if they stay like this. He'll spare their lives for information on how they plan to annihilate All Might. Momo and her friends, Kyoka Jiro and Denki Kaminari, are surrounded by bad guys. Kyoka, also known as Earphone Jack, uses her quirk to allow her heartbeats to transform into deadly sound waves by plugging her earplugs into her boots and can hear really quiet sounds. Kaminari has a quirk called Electrification, a quirk with electric powers, but going over his limit damages his brain and makes him an idiot for an amount of time. Momo has a quirk to create any non-living object she wants as long as she knows what it's made out of. Earphone Jack uses her quirk to stun the villains with her sound waves. Momo creates a blanket of isolation and covers herself and Kyoka up. Kaminari uses his quirk to shoot out an electric field and electrocute everyone around him. Unbeknownst to them, a villain was still alive because he was hidden underground. Shota was prepared to fight the hand-faced villain aka Tamura Shigaraki. It looked like he had the upper hand when he elbowed him in the chest, but this fight took a U-turn when the villain touched his elbow, destroying his elbow. Shota, now tired with a destroyed elbow, can't keep up with the villains. Tomaru tells Shota Aizawa he's not the boss fight, the villain behind him is. Shota turns around and sees a giant muscular blue bird monster behind him who quickly grabs his face and then proceeds to torture him by breaking his arms as he screams in suffering. Shota erases his quirk but still gets overpowered, meaning he's just that powerful with or without the use of a quirk, and he's probably on par in strength with All Might. Kurogiri reports back to Tomaru that he put 13 out of commission, but some students were stronger than they had seen and one of the students made it out alive, about to go get help. Tomaru gets frustrated and tells Kurogiri that he's lucky he's a portal or he'd be dead too. Tomaru realizes how much time they probably have before backup heroes arrive and they must retreat for now. This makes Tsuyu and Mineta happy, but they know that they want to kill All Might, so something is up. Before the two villains leave, they are going to kill the remaining students. Tomaru quickly approaches Tsuyu and is about to kill her with his decay power, but this is stopped by a pinned down Shota using his quirk, which makes Nomu smash and pin Shota's head down. Tomaru orders Nomu to kill Shota. He begins slamming Shota's head constantly into the floor. As Nomu is about to deliver the final blow to finish him off, his hands detach from his body and everyone is spooked and surprised by this. A voice is heard saying, "Hee hee," not a second later. The voice came from Deku, who walks from behind the water fountain. "Now walk away from my team or shall I eliminate you three here?" Deku says to both the bird monstrosity and the hand-faced villain. Tomaru sees Deku walking close as he tries to use his decay quickly on Tsuyu and Mineta once more, but gets one of his arms cut off by a shuriken thrown by Deku. This got Tomaru heated as he ordered Nomu to kill the green-haired boy. Nomu walks towards Deku and stops as he sees Deku cast his stand Zawarudo out. Zawarudo in Deku's mind is asking himself if this bird sees him. Deku stands Zawarudo and Nomu clash punches and barrages similar to how the world did to Star Platinum. The punches were so powerful they generated huge shockwaves which knocked people back. Nomu punches and breaks the world's arm, and the same effect happens to Deku. As Deku tries to regenerate, he is about to get attacked again by the monster. Deku calls out Zawarudo as time stands still once more. Deku proceeds to use his laser stingy eyes to cut the monster in half and throws a shuriken into its face. Time moves again as the aftermath of the time S regenerates as Deku's hand is restored to full health. Deku realizes he needs to fully obliterate the beast in order to put him down for good. Zawarudo exchanges more blows and manages to get some decent hits to land, but the shocks were absorbed by his quirks, shock absorption. The world retreats to Deku as he looks around to find a dead villain on the ground. He ran and used Zawarudo to stop time and absorb the dead villain's blood. The villain's blood and quirk strengthen the world as the world looks like a shadow ghost now. Round 2 begins as they swiftly close the gap between each other and start clashing again, but the world starts overpowering the evil bird as he knocks the head off the monster's body, but it still regenerates his entire body. Deku's superhuman senses go off as he hears footsteps. A second later, an explosion blows the doors open as All Might emerges saying his famous catchphrase, "I am here." Deku carries Shota away from the battle and then pierces his skin with his fingers. He pumps his blood from his body into Shota's and starts healing him. Shota wakes up and immediately notices that he's fully healed. The teacher asks if Deku healed him, but he says no. Aizawa tells Deku to go help save and evacuate the lost students and he'll help All Might. Deku tells him to warn All Might about Nomu's shock absorption and healing factor power. Deku starts running to help his team and remembers that All Might doesn't have any more time in his buff form. Deku is thinking to himself that maybe he should go back and maybe he can save everyone, including All Might. At the same time, Deku starts hearing more footsteps and looks to see Bakugo, Todoroki, and Kirishima moving quickly to All Might's location. Deku signs in relief as he flies off. All Might and Shota Aizawa stand side by side across from the face-covered villain and the bird beast. Shota feels a lot stronger and faster, due to Deku's enhanced blood in him, and that he wants to run it back with Tomaru. Shota tells All Might to be cautious about fighting Nomu due to him having shock absorption and regeneration. All Might evades and punches Nomu over and over again, but he doesn't budge. So All Might decided to body slam the monster from behind. Shota with newfound speed and power overpowers Tomaru with ease. Tomaru is being pressured because he's too fast and strong now compared to before. Kurogiri traps All Might inside one of his portals as Nomu begins to squeeze around his chest, including where his injury is. Kurogiri then attempts to close his portal on All Might to kill him. Bakugo jumps and pins down Kurogiri with one hand. Todoroki freezes the ground and Nomu while he's in the portal. All Might takes the time to free himself from the bird's grip. Kurogiri tries to break free from Bakugo's grip, so Bakugo threatens him that he'll blow him up. Tomaru tells Nomu to free Kurogiri from the aggressive blonde. Nomu runs and tries to punch the blonde in the face, but All Might intervenes in the attack and saves Bakugo. Realizing he doesn't have that much time left using One for All Might battle the titanic bird monster. All Might knows that even though it has shock absorption, it must have a limit to how much damage it can take before regenerating. The righteous hero goes beyond 100% of his power and continues to release an endless volley of punches at the villain. Going beyond his limits, All Might starts overpowering the bird and smacking him around. Then with one final attack, he punches the villain so hard he sends him flying through the roof. Everyone looked upwards wondering what just happened in amazement. All Might starts steaming again, meaning he's close to dropping out of his hero form. Back to where Momo's team was, the underground villain emerges and takes Denki as a hostage. The villain tells the female heroes in training to put their hands up or he'll eradicate Denki. Earphone Jack tries to plug her ear plug in without him knowing, but he catches on quickly. So he decides on a new deal. Earphone Jack has to pick to trade her life for Denki's or let him die. A second later, the villain gets his head cut clean off by a shuriken. Deku lands behind the girls and checks if everyone's okay. The girls blushed a little but calmed themselves down and said they were okay. Momo and Kyoka asked Deku how he got here, and Deku told them there was no time to explain and that they needed to get everyone to evacuate. Back to All Might, he had no more energy and tried to intimidate the villains to surrender. Tomaru proceeds to rush All Might in order to get revenge for Nomu. At that moment, they heard another familiar voice they didn't hear for a while. It was Ida, and he returned with backup. This made Tomaru terrified, as the villains have no other choice but to retreat. One of the pro-heroes shot Tomaru in one of his shoulders and both shanks as he fell over. Kurogiri uses his portal-like skin like a force field around him. 13 then proceeds to vacuum the villain up with her full power this time. Tomaru is teleported by Kurogiri, who then teleports himself before getting completely sucked up. Time jump to the pro-heroes arresting a lot of villains and removing the dead bodies, then helping any endangered students. Now every student knows the dangers of being a hero. Deku flies to All Might without anyone seeing as the students are being evacuated. Kirishima notices Deku and rushes to check up on him. All Might's blood runs cold as he realizes that Kirishima will see his true form. Deku is about to use his time stop power, but a wall of concrete has materialized in front of them. A hero who looks like the Thwomp Stones from the Mario games told the hardened student to go tell the remaining students to head towards the exit. The concrete quirk hero's name is Cementos because his quirk allows him to have full control of the concrete. All Might aka Yagi Toshinori appreciates Cementos for helping him. Cementos tells All Might that they need to get him to a hospital, but Deku says he can handle that. Kurogiri transported him and Tomaru back to their hideout. They report to the boss that All Might wasn't weaker and that the thugs they brought along perished or were being apprehended by now, thinking that the boss lied to him. The boss's voice from the TV asked where was Nomu and why wasn't he with him. The duo told him that Nomu was taken out by All Might, which confounded him even when they made him stronger with all the power granted to him to use. Speaking of power, Tomaru remembered a boy with green hair that was strong enough to hold his own against Nomu. However, Nomu was fighting against air for some reason, like there was an invisible wall there. Tomaru was pissed because he could have killed All Might, Shota, and some of his students if he didn't intervene. The mission was a loss, but they did gather some information from this. The boss tells the duo to take all the villain elites and show the world why it should fear him. The students were unharmed. They were talking about how they fought the villains using their powers because it was their first time. They even told him how All Might blew their minds by punching the bird-beast hybrid through the roof of the USJ. The detective then went ahead and told everyone to get back to the main campus. Shota was completely fine compared to the main timeline and returned to normal after Deku's blood boost expired. 13 was in the hospital and was going to make a full recovery soon. All Might was without any serious injuries and was recovering. The detective is notified that they have arrested another villain, aka Nomu. The detective asked Principal Nezu to allow him and his team to search the school in order to check for potential villains, and he granted them access to do it. Time jump to later in the day. Deku jumps through Recovery Girl's nurse office's window, which frightens her. Recovery Girl screams at the broccoli head not to do that again and use the door next time. Deku asks if All Might was alright, and he said that he used his powers too much and Bakath won for All Might have shortened. The detective goes to see Yagi for more information. He told Small Might that before he was on the scene, the students told him that Deku helped them escape and fought off the Titanic mutated freak. If he wasn't there, those kids would have been seriously hurt or even killed. The detective says that Deku, Aizawa, and Yagi did a fine job today. Yagi tells the detective that the students did a good job, especially Deku, did a good job holding their own against the villains and that they'll become good heroes due to their drive. At night, Deku met with Ochako and Ida as they walked home.